They warned us never to touch the ancestor's mask. They said it was carved to imprison a betrayer's soul. But on the night it began to weep blood, the elders locked themselves inside their homes. Because the mask wasn't crying from pain. It was crying from recognition. And it was calling my bloodline home. If you hear dripping in the dark, it's already too late. They say some roads in Nigeria remember more footsteps than they should. The night I returned to Umu-Oru, the road felt tighter, as if the earth itself was shrinking to keep me from entering. Red laterite dust clung to my shoes, heavy and damp, like coagulated blood. The forest leaned inward, branches bending unnaturally, whispering in a language older than fear. Fragments of words that sounded like my name, twisted and mocking. The moon hung low and yellow, sick, swollen, like an infected eye watching me from the canopy. Every step I took echoed back twice, as if someone or something was mirroring my movements just out of sight. I had sworn never to come back. 32 years old, a Lagos journalist hardened by city chaos, deadlines and skepticism. I no longer believed in curses, in the old tales my grandmother spun by lantern light. Yet there I was, clutching a letter that should not exist. The letter had arrived 3 days earlier. No return address. No stamp. Just my name, Chinyu, scrawled in my mother's elegant handwriting, the loops and curls as familiar as a scar. My mother had been dead for 7 years. Buried in Umu-Oru soil that refused to grow anything after her funeral. The letter said only one thing. The mask has begun to cry. Come home before it finishes. I tried to laugh it off at first. Prank, maybe. But when I held it to the light, faint red stains bloomed on the paper, like fingerprints pressed too hard. And the smell, faint, metallic like old coins or fresh wounds. The bus refused to go any further. The driver stopped beside the rusted signboard that once read "Welcome to Umu-Oru." Half the letters had peeled away, leaving scars in the metal that looked like claw marks. He would not meet my eyes. His hands trembled on the wheel. "May whatever followed you stay on this road," he whispered, making the sign of the cross before speeding away. His tires kicking up dust that swirled like angry spirits. I stood alone. The forest exhaled, a long, rattling breath that carried the scent of decay and wet earth. Shadows shifted between the trees, shapes that could have been animals, or figures hunched low, watching. In Umu-Oru, everyone knew the rule. When the ancestors warn you once, you listen. When they warn you twice, you leave. No one survives the third call. As I walked deeper into the village, I noticed the silence first. No insects chirping their nightly symphony. No night birds calling warnings. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if afraid to stir the air. Then I saw the houses, doors bolted with heavy iron chains, windows sealed with palm fronds woven into wards and smeared with white chalk markings meant to repel spirits. Symbols of protection, circles with thorns, eyes crossed out. They were hiding from something already awake. A chill crawled up my spine, not from the cooling night, but from a memory. Childhood nights when I'd wake to whispers outside my window, convinced the trees were breathing my secrets. Before we go further, if African ancestral horror speaks to you, subscribe now and don't forget to like this video. Because some stories don't like being told twice. My family house stood at the edge of the village, exactly where my grandmother said cursed bloodlines were meant to live. Close enough to belong, far enough to burn alone if the spirits demanded sacrifice. The mud walls were cracked like dried skin, veins of red clay pulsing faintly in the moonlight. Vines had overgrown the roof, twisting like fingers clutching at the thatch. The door groaned as I pushed it open, releasing a wave of dust mixed with old palm oil, and something else. Metallic. Blood has a smell you never forget, thick, coppery, alive. Inside nothing had changed. My mother's wooden stool sat crooked in the corner, as if she'd just risen from it. The calabash bowl on the shelf, chipped from years of use. The faded photograph of my parents smiling on a day before secrets matured, their eyes now seeming to follow me across the room. And then there was the hallway. Long and narrow, shadows pooling at the end like spilled ink. At the far side, the locked room. We were never beaten for going near it as children. We were simply warned. Some things look back when you look at them. The padlock was new. Fresh iron, gleaming unnaturally in the dim light, as if it had been forged yesterday. Someone had been here. Recently. From behind the door came a sound. Rip. Soft like a leaky faucet in a distant room. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. Rip. Low. Wet. Patient. Insistent. I raised my hand toward the lock, my fingers trembling inches away. Bang! A violent knock slammed against the front door, shaking the entire house. Dust rained from the ceiling. I spun around, breath caught in my throat. It was Auntie Ifeanyi. Her hair had gone completely white, not with age but with fear, strands standing out like wires. Her eyes refused to settle on my face. Instead, they kept drifting to the hallway behind me, wide with terror. She clutched a rosary, her knuckles white. "You came," she breathed, her voice a ragged whisper. "Thank the ancestors. You came. But why so late? The night is already listening. You wrote to me," I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She shook her head violently, her rosary beads clacking. "Never. I would rather cut my tongue. The dead don't need ink to speak." She would not step inside. Not even when rain began to fall. Sudden, heavy drops that hammered the roof like fists. Water sluiced down the walls outside, turning the ground to mud that bubbled unnaturally. "Why is the room locked?" I demanded, glancing back at the hallway. The dripping had paused, as if listening. Her lips trembled. "Because it has started again. And this time, it won't stop at tears." Again. That word opened a grave in my mind. Memories flooded back. My mother whispering to me as a child, "The mask hungers for truth, Chinyu. And truth always bleeds." Auntie Ifeanyi told me the story I was never meant to hear. Her voice dropping lower with each word, as if afraid the walls would repeat them. About the Umu-Oru mask. Carved generations ago from sacred Irako wood. Etched with Nsibidi symbols that bound souls like chains. It was made to imprison the spirit of a man, our ancestor, who betrayed Umu-Oru. He sold villagers to slave raiders in exchange for wealth and power, trading lives for gold that turned to ash in his hands. When he was caught, the elders refused to kill him swiftly. Instead, they did something worse. They bound his spirit into the wood while he still breathed, carving his screaming face as he screamed, trapping his essence in eternal agony. "The mask weeps when it hungers," Auntie Ifeanyi whispered, rain pounding outside. "Tears for the betrayed. But when it cries blood, it means it remembers. And it calls for payment." "Remembers what?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. She looked at me with pity, her eyes glistening. "Who fed it? Who carried the sin forward? Your mother knew. She tried to silence it once. And paid with her life." The dripping behind the locked door resumed, louder now, like footsteps approaching through water. Auntie Ifeanyi backed away, vanishing into the storm. "Don't open it alone," she called. "Or it will claim you too." That night, sleep dragged me into a dream so real I woke tasting iron on my tongue. I stood in the village square. Mud pulsed beneath my feet like living flesh, warm and throbbing. Drums beat without drummers, deep rhythmic thuds that matched my heartbeat. The elders formed a circle, their faces blurred except one. My mother. Her eyes were hollow pits, black voids that sucked in the light. Her skin was pale, stretched tight over bones. "Why did you leave us with it?" she asked, her voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Blood trickled from her lips with each word. Behind her, the mask hung from an iroko tree, suspended by vines that writhed like snakes. Thick blood streamed from its eyes, soaking the roots below. The roots moved, crawling upward, twisting around the trunk, reaching for me. One tendril brushed my ankle, cold, slimy, alive. I jerked back, but the ground softened, pulling me down. My mother's hand extended, fingers elongating unnaturally. "Come home, Chinyu. The mask misses its daughter." I woke screaming, drenched in sweat. The room was pitch black, but the dripping had become a steady stream, splattering now like rain inside the walls. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing red streaks on the floor, seeping from under the locked door, tracing ancient Nsibidi symbols that glowed faintly before fading. By morning, the village gathered outside my house, but no one crossed the doorway. They stood in a semicircle, murmuring prayers, their faces etched with dread. Children clung to mother's skirts, eyes wide. Blood seeped from beneath the locked room door, pooling in the cracks, bubbling as if breathing. A young boy, barely 10, stepped too close, curious. He reached down to touch the red liquid. Suddenly, he collapsed in the dust, convulsing. When he screamed, blood poured from his mouth, thick and dark, staining his shirt. His eyes rolled back, whites turning crimson. The elders arrived too late, pushing through the crowd. One of them, an old man with a staff carved like a serpent, knelt beside the boy, chanting incantations. But the child's body went still, foam bubbling at his lips. "The mask has chosen," the chief said, his voice grave, staring directly at me. "It tastes innocence first, then family." The crowd dispersed, whispering my name like a curse. That night, the elders gathered in secret, pulling me into the chief's hut under cover of darkness. Flickering lantern light cast long shadows that danced like spirits. They told me everything, details my mother had hidden. The mask could only be silenced by confession. The descendant of the betrayer had to accept the sin, speak his true name aloud, Obina the traitor, and offer blood willingly. Not just any blood. Blood from the vein of regret. "You are the last," the chief said, his eyes boring into mine. "Your mother stayed to protect you. She confessed for the family. But the mask rejected her. It wanted the pure line. Yours." Flashbacks hit me like blows. My mother locking the room one stormy night when I was 12. Her hands shaking as she whispered, "It's crying again, Chinyu. But not for me." The next morning she was weaker, paler, as if something had drained her. At midnight they unlocked the door. The smell hit first, overwhelming like a slaughterhouse mixed with rotting wood. Then the sight. The mask pulsed on the wall, veins moving beneath the wood, throbbing like a heart. Blood streamed endlessly from its eyes, forming rivulets that snaked across the floor toward me. Its mouth twitched. Then it smiled, a grotesque wooden grin that cracked the carving. My mother's voice poured out, soft and loving at first. "Daughter." The elders fled, their chants breaking into screams as the door slammed shut behind them, locking me in. I stood alone. The mask spoke truths buried for generations. My ancestor had sold his own children, including his firstborn daughter, to the raiders. Their screams echoed in the wood, trapped forever. The blood on the floor rose, forming shapes, hands reaching up, grasping at my ankles. Cold fingers wrapped around my legs, pulling. I screamed, but the room absorbed the sound. The mask's eyes locked on mine. "Confess," it hissed in my mother's voice. "Or join us." Visions flooded my mind. My ancestor laughing as chains dragged away his kin. My mother, alone in this room years ago, cutting her palm, begging for mercy. Her blood rejected, turning black and boiling. I grabbed a shard of broken calabash from the floor, sharp as a knife. The pulling intensified, the blood hands climbing higher, nails digging into my skin. "I remember you," I whispered through tears. "Obinna the traitor. And I reject you." I slashed my palm deep, pressing the wound to the mask's mouth. It wailed, a piercing shriek that shattered the windows, wind howling in. Blood burst like rain, soaking me, filling my mouth with its copper taste. The mask convulsed, cracks spiderwebbing across its face. Then it split open with a final crack, wood splintering like bones. Me. Silent. The blood receded, evaporating into mist. By dawn, the forest had retreated, trees straightening as if released from a spell. Umu-Oru breathed again, the silence broken by birdsong, children laughing outside. But as I packed to leave, wiping the dried blood from my skin, I saw the symbol carved into my healing palm. The same Nsibidi mark from under the door. Faint but pulsing. Reminder. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Scary African Tales by Sana. And remember, some curses don't end. They migrate. And sometimes, they follow you home.